Welcome back to the FPL video and podcast. I'll be covering the best budget players ahead of the new season, and there's going to be several differentials that will be showcased today, and I'll cover even more of them in the dedicated best differentials video, so be sure to check that out, as well as many other pieces of content by smashing the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Check all the other links in the description below for my Twitter and Instagram, the Discord server, and Draft Ham, which you can see on screen on YouTube. It has so many different features like the fixture difficulty rating, and at the moment Arsenal are top for game week 1, and I think Man City are favoured from game weeks 1 to 5 overall. You've also got the player rankings, which I have delved into in recent videos and podcasts, and much more. I'll be referring to it throughout the summer. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The most likely 4 million goalkeeper who's going to start this season is Fabianski, and a lot depends on Areola's future. If he stays with the Hammers, then I think Fabianski will remain the second choice goalkeeper under the new manager Julian Lopetegui. But if Areola were to go to Saudi Arabia or any other club, I think Fabianski becomes the #1 goalkeeper, and at 4 million he would be almost essential in a way. I think everyone would be flocking towards him, and the ownership's already rising. It's currently at 9%, but it would easily be 20-30%, possibly even more, if Areola leaves the club and Fabianski is the #1 goalkeeper. He has started every single game during pre-season, and in the last campaign only 1 clean sheet, 1 bonus point, and 24 FPL points overall with 33 saves, but he's actually produced 100 points or more in 8 seasons in the Premier League for Swansea City and West Ham United. So he's got a great track record. He's been a fantastic servant for West Ham and a great FPL asset over the years. And this could be another season where Fabianski delivers at such a cheap price point. There are multiple 4.5 million goalkeepers on offer. I've covered several of them in the best goalkeepers video and podcast, and I'll cover even more in the best differentials. And Neto definitely applies to that. Very low ownership at just 2.8%, but the main issue is that Bournemouth are linked with a goalkeeper, and Neto is always rumoured to drop down to the bench over the last season or so, and that could be a cause for concern. He kept 7 clean sheets for the Cherries in the last campaign with over 100 saves, 14 bonus points, which is very impressive, and 110 FPL points overall. He could certainly match that or perhaps even better those tallies if he stays as the #1 goalkeeper for Bournemouth, and game week 1 looks quite good on paper against Nottingham Forest away, but last season it was a goal fest, and Nuno Espirito Santo, I believe that was his first game in charge against Bournemouth, where Solanke scored a hat-trick. Afterwards, it's not particularly great, with Newcastle and Chelsea at home within the next 4 game weeks, but Neto remains a solid option in goal if he stays as the first-choice goalkeeper for the Cherries. It would be very easy for me to say Verbruggen is an avoid, and that is the case right now because he is injured for the opening part of the season. But once he's available, I'd highly recommend Verbruggen as a 4.5 million goalkeeper, and I think he could easily get into 120, possibly even 130 FPL points. But of course, with him missing so many games at the beginning, that will be very difficult for him to achieve, but he could set that sort of pace and earn a number of points per match to really get into very good numbers and be one of the best goalkeepers in FPL. So keep an eye out for Verbruggen, who impressed at the Euros. He was the youngest goalkeeper in the Netherlands' history in that competition. His ownership is very low at 2.6%, and of course the injury plays a big part in that. Only 4 clean sheets in the last season, and a lot of rotation between him and Jason Steele. I don't think that'll be the case this time round with the new manager, and Verbruggen should be the #1 goalkeeper. So avoid him for now, there's no denying that, but once Verbruggen is fit, I think he could be one of the best 4.5 million goalkeepers in the game. I mentioned the rotation between Verbruggen and Jason Steele in the last campaign, and we could see something similar between Dean Henderson and Johnston this season. In fact, in the last 4 friendlies that Crystal Palace have played, Dean Henderson has started the last 2 matches, but in the first 2 games, it was Johnston in goal. So just keep an eye out for that situation, but I believe Dean Henderson will be the #1 goalkeeper. He performed quite well since the appointment of Oliver Glasner, and Johnston was unavailable for certain matches, and that should be taken into account. But I think Dean Henderson has the nod here, and he should be starting in game week 1. If that isn't the case, or if Johnson starts the rest of the preseason games, then I'd probably look to avoid Dean Henderson until we know for certain that he's going to start. But for now, I'm still quite confident that will be the case. So Dean Henderson remains a solid choice to cover that Crystal Palace defence, especially with Mark Gay linked with a move away to Newcastle. You've still got Joachim Andersen at 4.5 million. He's my favourite way of covering the Eagles defensively. You've got Munoz at right back with more attacking potential. potential and bonus points. Even Tyreek Mitchell is decent, but Dean Henderson will be the second best way, I think, of covering that defence. He kept 4 clean sheets in the last season with 58 saves, 2 bonus points and 48 FPL points overall. So let's see who will start between Johnson and Henderson. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but I'm going for the former Man United goalkeeper between the sticks. Vestergaard participated at the Euros as Denmark crashed out in the round of 16 stage to the host Germany in controversial fashion, but he has returned to Leicester and he has featured in the last 2 friendly games, a 1-0 defeat to Palermo, and he started against Augsburg, yet another 1-0 defeat. He should be nailed on at 4 million, but if you want to be on the safe side, you might want to go for Wout Faes, and both of these centre-backs did score twice for Leicester last season in the Championship, featuring in over 40 games. But I think Wout Faes is slightly more nailed on if you want to be very safe and secure in that regard. But I still think Vestergaard will start the vast majority of matches in the Premier League this season. He also won a penalty, which would have counted as an assist should that be converted, and he kept 10 clean sheets for the Foxes. The opening 4 fixtures aren't particularly great, but from Game Week 5 onwards, I think Leicester start to embark on a very good fixture run, especially from Game Week 6 in particular. So I think Vestergaard is worth it as your 5th defender, but you might want to go for Wout Faes instead. The Belgian started every single game at the Euros too, and he was a hero in Euro Fantasy with the ball recoveries in mind. There's no such thing in Fantasy Premier League, unfortunately, but Wout Faes can still offer great value at 4 million, and he's a more template pick than Vestergaard with 8.8% ownership. He also scored twice, won a penalty, 0 assists, but he kept more clean sheets with 14, and the opening fixtures, as I mentioned, aren't particularly great. Maybe a clean sheet is possible in the first 4 game weeks, but on paper it doesn't seem very likely, and you'd probably rather go for a Jamie Vardy up front as one of your budget players instead. But as a 5th defender, you can't go wrong with Wout Faes or Vestergaard. Valentin Barco has been very impressive in pre-season, which has seen his ownership surge to 10.2%. When I first made this graphic, it was half that, so it really has shown a lot of interest in the Argentine left-back, who should start the first 3 game weeks of the season, possibly even Game Week 4 against Ipswich Town at home. It all depends on when Pervis Estupiñán returns, and that probably will be around Game Week 4 to 5, so just watch this space. Barco is kind of a short to medium-term solution. You can't rely on him for the rest of the season, but if he impresses in Estupiñán's absence, you could see Barco displacing the Ecuadorian at left back, at least temporarily. So for 4 million, he's the most exciting defender on offer, but he's not as secure as Vestergaard or Wout Faes in terms of clean sheet potential, and also, most importantly of all, in terms of minutes and starts. He got no goals or assists for Brighton last season and only 4 shots and 5 FPL points, but he's got some decent career stats, mainly due to his time at Boca Juniors, where he was really impressive, and that's what earned him the move to Brighton Hove Albion. So watch out for Barco. He's a very popular option now, and I think he's only going to become even more popular and in demand as we approach the Game Week 1 deadline. But for 4 million defenders, if you want to take a punt and a bit of a risk, go for the Argentine in this position. Howard Bellis scored in a 3-1 victory over Montpellier in a recent preseason friendly, and he's quite a template pick, dare I say, almost template actually, with 14.5% ownership. He's even more popular than Valentin Barco at the moment, and Southampton kicked the season off with Newcastle away, Nottingham Forest at home, Brentford away, and Manchester United at home. 2 goals and 3 assists for Howard Bellis last season in the Championship, with 4 yellow cards, which is very impressive considering he featured in over 40 matches and 11 clean sheets for the Saints. He's not my favourite 4 million defender, but if you want an option from a newly promoted club, Howard Bellis is one of the better players you can go for. There was a time when Ricardo Pereira was a very expensive option in FPL when Leicester were consistently finishing in the top 8, but he's now at 4.5 million, which makes him very appealing. His ownership is 0.4%. He got 3 goals and 3 assists in the Championship last year with 8 yellow cards, which is a bit of a concern. It's not too many yellow cards, but double the amount of Howard Bellis, and Ricardo Pereira played far fewer minutes than the former Man City player. 7 clean sheets there for the Portuguese right back as well. The opening fixtures aren't necessarily that great, and for 0.5 million less, you can go for Vestergaard or Wout Faes, and at the moment, that's what I'd recommend instead of Ricardo Pereira. Robinson provided an assist in a 1-0 victory over Sevilla, and he was quite impressive in the Premier League last time out with 6 assists, no goals, but 8 bonus points and over 100 FPL points overall. His ownership is 5.5%. He's priced at 4.5 million, and I'll cover another Fulham fullback in the differentials video and podcast. It's very close between Robinson and Castagna, but you could argue Robinson will be the better pick over the course of the season. Fulham's opening fixtures are quite good. Man United away is relatively tough in game week 1, but then it's Leicester at home, Ipswich away, and West Ham at home. So Robinson is certainly a solid choice at left back. He only just about missed out on the top 20 best defenders in that respective video, but Robinson is still a solid choice at the back line. Van de Ven was impressive in his debut season for Tottenham Hotspur. He scored 3 times, got 10 bonus points in FPL and 81 points overall. He would have reached 100 plus if he had stayed fit for a larger part of the season, but he picked up that injury against Chelsea, which was the beginning of the end for Tottenham. They started to derail, they lost a lot of games consecutively and lost all momentum, and Van de Ven is crucial to that Tottenham defence. They still concede a lot of goals and don't keep enough clean sheets, but that's something they can improve upon this season, and I think a midfielder, especially a defensive-minded one, would probably be ideal to sort those issues out and offer the defence more protection, because individually, Romero, Van de Ven, Udogie and Bodro are all good defenders, or at least players. I think Bodro is a bit suspect defensively. He bombs forward and creates so many chances, but the other 3 are very solid at the back, especially Romero, and of course Van de Ven is a nice partner for him as well. The first 2 game weeks look good for Tottenham against Leicester and Everton, but then it's Newcastle away and Arsenal, and as I've mentioned several times, they have a poor record at St James's Park. 10 goals conceded in the last 2 meetings, and they've also lost the last 2 home games against Arsenal, so that's not a great fixture on paper. But Van de Ven is still a solid choice at 4.5 million, but I wouldn't recommend him right now, and instead wait for when Spurs' fixtures turn for the better. Konsa is another defender who featured at the Euros. He can play 2 positions at centre-back and right-back, both of which he does very well, but he offers limited goal threat. Also, the assists aren't really there for him, and bonus points aren't a luxury for Konsa owners, and in fact, I don't think he's as appealing as he was a few weeks ago, as his ownership has gone down to 17%, but the biggest appeal is that 4.5 million price tag, and it's the best way of covering Aston Villa defensively, alongside Emi Martinez possibly. I know some people will still mention Matty Cash, but I'll cover him in a future video and podcast. I don't think he'll start right back, at least for most games this season. We could see some rotation where Konsa is safe for the Champions League, and in fact he might get the odd rest in the Premier League, which is something we didn't see last season, but I still think Konsa will start 30 plus games this season, and he should get 100 FPL points or more, and I'm expecting Aston Villa to keep more clean sheets, because as good as they were last season, defensively they leaked so many chances and goals. Mykolenko started and played an entire half against Preston North End, a 3-0 victory there for the Toffees. He has been linked with moves away, but I think Mykolenko will stay at the club, and at 4.5 million, he would be the best way of covering the Toffees defensively. You've got Pickford in goal, Tarkowski, and also Branthwaite if he stays at the club, but I think Mykolenko at 0.5 million less offers the best value overall. His ownership is 11.3%, and it was around 9% a few weeks ago. He scored twice and got an assist in the Premier League with 9 bonus points and 101 FPL points. He is certainly my preference over Konsa. I think Everton will probably keep more clean sheets, although that's maybe a bold prediction, and also I think Mykolenko is just better in terms of points per match. Whilst Konsa might get 30 plus starts and Mykolenko is more injury prone, he suffered some injury problems during the Euros for example, I still think Mykolenko is worth owning in the short spells where he's fit. Lisandro Martinez still hasn't returned from his Copa America duties, where he started 5 out of 6 games and scored in the quarterfinals, and he's not really a great FPL option, at least historically, but I think if he can stay fit, get 30 plus starts, he could be able to get over 100 FPL points. Now, the amount of yellow cards he gets is a big concern, and he got 3 in just a handful of starts last season, only the 1 assist, no goals whatsoever. His only Premier League goal, in fact, came against Arsenal at the Emirates the season before last, but his ownership is 5%, he's priced at 4.5 million, and he could offer tremendous value at that price point with some good opening fixtures for Manchester United. So Lisandro Martinez is a decent option if he can stay fit, but the yellow cards are always going to be a concern. The final defender covered today will be Davis from Ipswich Town. He produced some incredible numbers in the Championship last season. If he can do half of that, especially in terms of assists in the Premier League this time out, then he could be one of the best defenders in the game. His ownership is only 2.9%. He got 2 goals and 18 assists with an expected assist figure of 10.54, which is ridiculous for a left back. 15 big chances created. The opening two fixtures are enough to put anybody off against Liverpool at home and Man City away. But then it's Fulham at home and Brighton away, and one clean sheet is possible, especially in game week 3 there. But I think with Davis, you're really owning him for the attacking potential and the assist threat. So keep an eye out for Davis. He's probably the best Ipswich Town asset overall, but there are some nice midfielders that I'm going to cover very soon. Bergvall is certainly the most exciting 4-point family midfielder on offer. You've got a safe option in Harry Winks, who's going to start every single game and guarantee you 2 to 3 points. But if you want an exciting option in this position, go for Bergvall. I don't think he'll start in game week 1, but as the season progresses, I think he's going to impress in his short cameos off the bench and potentially start later in this campaign. And I think next season and also in the years to come, I think Bergvall will start most games for Tottenham Hotspur. But maybe this season is a bit too early for him. Just watch out for him because he has impressed. He got an assist in pre-season in a 5-1 victory over Hearts, and in Sweden he got 3 goals and an assist in 11 starts, so he's definitely got the potential. 2.4 shots per game was also the standout underlying number. His ownership is 0.8%, so at 4.5 million, Harry Winks is a safer pick, but Bergvall is a lot more exciting. Generally speaking, I dismiss Soucek in FPL videos. I don't really mention him too much, but priced at 5 million, he is a solid, dependable option who mainly plays as a defensive midfielder, and he can score plenty of goals. 7 in the last campaign with 2 assists, 16 big chances is incredible for a 5 million midfielder, and he's produced over 100 FPL points in 4 consecutive seasons, and 116 was his last production. So I think Soucek is definitely someone to consider if you want a player at this price point as your 5th choice, and you can rotate him with some defenders you have, or perhaps if you've got an 8-man attack including Soucek. The opening fixtures are certainly poor for West Ham, especially in game week 3 against Manchester City, but Soucek is always a threat, particularly from set pieces. Aston Villa have faltered in recent preseason games, but at the beginning they were looking quite impressive, and Rodgers was at the heart of it. He got a brace against Warsaw in a 3-0 victory, and also he got a goal in another 3-0 victory over Spartak. So I think Rodgers could be the best 5 million midfielder or under in the entire game. He got 3 goals and 1 assist in the last campaign, similar to Bergvall, and 3 yellow cards, which is a bit concerning considering the limited starts he got. But I think he's going to get much more starts this time round, especially with Diaby leaving the club, and also Rodgers looking so impressive at the end of last season and also in the recent friendlies. He got 35 FPL points. I think he can get over 100 FPL points, and I'm expecting him to get a lot of game time, and we could see him start the Premier League matches whilst the main wingers and players for Aston Villa in the attacking positions will be rested for the Champions League. Wharton was called up to the England squad but wasn't used at all. No minutes whatsoever. He was constantly sitting on the bench, and he will be back with Crystal Palace very soon. He's a top talent, just like Rodgers, priced at 5 million as well, with very low ownership at 0.8%. He got 3 assists for Crystal Palace last season, and he was a revelation, especially since the appointment of Oliver Glasner. That managerial bounce and his tactics definitely got the best out of Crystal Palace, and players like Wharton have really shone in the last couple of months. He got 4 bonus points as well and 50 FPL points. He could be another cheap midfielder who can get to 100 FPL points or above, especially when you translate the game time and also the points per match he showed last season. If you can replicate those numbers, I think Wharton could be a very solid choice in this position. Now, I do prefer Rodgers if you want to go for a family midfielder, but Wharton isn't a bad option whatsoever. Oscar Bob scored twice and provided 3 assists in just 4 friendlies for Man City. Bearing in mind they lost 3 of those matches, I think Oscar Bob could be a massive differential here, and I have classed him as one of the best budget midfielders, and I think it's between him and Rodgers for that 5 million midfielder slot. His ownership is 0.8%, but when I first made this graphic it was 0.1%, so the recent goals, such as the one against Chelsea, have really piqued some people's interest, but still not enough to get him to over 1% ownership. But it does show you he is a massive differential. Will he start a lot of games? Probably not, but when the time comes, I think Oscar Bob will be ready, and he's kind of like the new, maybe not Cole Palmer, but I think that sort of mould of a player who's ready to start 20 plus Premier League games and make a big impact. And I think Oscar Bob is one of the most talented youngsters Man City have produced in recent seasons. He got 1 goal and 2 assists in the last Premier League campaign, and that goal was a winner in the last few minutes against Newcastle when De Bruyne came on from the bench in his return and just changed the game completely. completely. Oscar Bob also got 2 bonus points and 30 points overall. These numbers are going to double, perhaps even triple in this upcoming season, so watch out for the Norwegian. He is a top talent for Manchester City. There are 2 midfielders to look out for from Ipswich Town. One of them is Hutchinson and the other I'll cover in the best differentials video and podcast. But having said that, Hutchinson is a differential himself with 1.2% ownership, and he got 10 goals and 5 assists in the Championship last season with an XGI figure of 10.40, which is very decent considering his price. 7 big chances created as well. The other underlying numbers aren't particularly great, but Hutchinson is definitely impressive and he's got a lot of potential. The former Arsenal and Chelsea player is always looking to get more game time, and the first 2 game weeks don't look great, but I wouldn't mind a Hutchinson in game weeks 3 or 4 against Fulham and Brighton. So in terms of newly promoted clubs, I'm not a big fan of most of the midfielders, but I think Hutchinson is right up there as one of the very best. Many of these budget players cross over into the differential section, and of course there will be a separate video covering even more of these players. And Sarabia at 0.4% is the pure definition of a differential. He's priced at 5.5 million. He got 4 goals and 7 assists in the last Premier League season with an XGI figure of 10.52, which is very impressive considering he did it in the Premier League and he's such a cheap player in this position. 99 FPL points, just 1 shy of the Centurion mark. He plays Arsenal away in Game Week 1 and Chelsea and Newcastle at home don't look great in the first 4, but Game Week 3 is a very appealing fixture on paper and Sarabia is very underrated. He scored in a 3-0 win over Leipzig in Wolves' recent friendly, and I think Sarabia is one of the very best options at 5.5 million and below. We are sport for choice in this position, and even at this price point, Semenyo has been reclassified from a forward to a midfielder, and that's only going to mean more FPL points with a clean sheet points and also an extra point for scoring each goal. So Semenyo is going to be a very intriguing option indeed, and I don't see many better at 5.5 million or below. The only ones I think that can compete with him include Rodgers, who I highlighted earlier. Now Semenyo's opening fixtures aren't particularly great. Game Week 1 looks good, but after that it does get more challenging. He had 70 shots in the last Premier League campaign with 8 goals and 4 assists. He even scored at Anfield in the first few game weeks of last season. Over 100 FPL points. He can get to 120 or possibly even more this time round. In a recent friendly where Bournemouth lost on penalties to Arsenal, Semenyo scored in that game, so he's definitely ready for Game Week 1. McNeil has always been a very underrated option during his time at Burnley and now at Everton. His price tag is 5.5 million, which is very reasonable, and his ownership is only 0.9%. He got 3 goals and 8 assists in the last Premier League season with 69 key passes and 124 FPL points. His creativity and crossing have always been his biggest strengths, and the opening 4 fixtures don't look great for Everton with Tottenham and Aston Villa away, but until Game Week 14, which is in early December, Everton are top of the fixture difficulty rating, so don't let these opening 4 fixtures surprise you or fool you. McNeil is a very solid option as your 5th midfielder. I wouldn't want to start him every single game, and I think there are better options as I've discussed before like Semenyo and Rodgers, but McNeil is certainly not a bad choice, and the only Everton attacker that can rival him is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Another enticing option at 5.5 million is Callum Hudson-Odoi, particularly for the first 3 game weeks of the season where Nottingham Forest host Bournemouth and Wolves and also face Southampton away in between. Then it gets very tricky from Game Week 4 onwards because of Liverpool away and other fixtures of that ilk, but Hudson-Odoi remains very appealing for the first 3 game weeks, and the goals and bonus points potential is certainly there. He got 8 goals and 14 bonus points respectively, only 2 assists. The underlying numbers aren't particularly great. Only 3 big chances. The XG was 2.65. The expected assists also similar at 2.02. These are terrible underlying numbers, but for the first 3 game weeks, I think Hudson-Odoi is a great budget midfielder, and I think he could easily get over 100 FPL points once again. Expect to see much more from Adingra this season. He was very impressive in the last campaign with his cameos, and he definitely showed what he's about. He got 6 goals and 1 assist, 52 shots, 97 FPL points. I think Adingra could be Brighton's best asset in the midfield, even with Mitoma returning from his long-term injury. Adingra's ownership is 0.7%. He's priced at 5.5 million, and the opening fixtures aren't great, but from Game Week 4 onwards, Brighton go on a good run of fixtures, especially Ipswich Town at home. Andres Pereira has delivered over 120 FPL points in the last 2 Premier League seasons, and he was 4.5 million in the season before last, and that's where he was a very template pick. But at 5.5 million, that has made him less desirable, and that's why his ownership is only 4.4%, with Fulham having great fixtures to start this season, and Smith Rowe is the talk of the town following the signing from Arsenal, and he would be the most enticing pick. But I still think Andres Pereira might offer more FPL points and security of starts than Emil Smith Rowe, who has been fairly injury prone over the last couple of years. Andres Pereira got 3 goals and 9 assists in the last Premier League campaign with 84 key passes. That is incredible. Only 7 less than Saka, for example, and more than the likes of Foden. So Andres Pereira is a very creative player. He can create shots from set pieces and open play, and he can get the odd goal here and there. So don't discount Andres Pereira. He's a great choice in the midfield. I mentioned Doucouré earlier. He is still a solid choice in the midfield at 5.5 million. His ownership is even lower than McNeil's at 0.6%, and he's going to score more goals than him once again. He got 7 in the last campaign with 3 assists and 17 big chances. Very similar numbers to Soucek, for example. These are cheap midfielders with great underlying numbers and goal potential, and Everton's fixtures are excellent until Game Week 14. 116 FPL points is also very impressive for Doucouré, who kept Everton up by the skin of their teeth the season before last. He is a good player for them, and I'd still recommend him in FPL if you want a 5.5 million midfielder or below. Before I move on to the forwards, it's worth talking about Anthony Elanga, who has better underlying numbers than Gibbs-White and also Hudson-Odoi. He had 5 goals and 9 assists in the last campaign with 14 big chances, almost 5 times the amount of Hudson-Odoi, and 119 FPL points. The opening 3 fixtures are definitely worth targeting, so one Nottingham Forest attacker, whether it's Hudson-Odoi, Elanga, Gibbs-White or Chris Wood, is definitely viable. You can even go for 2 of them, although that's still going to be quite risky, of course. But Anthony Elanga at 5.5 million offers excellent value, and I wouldn't discount him doing very well this season. Armstrong was very underwhelming in the last 2 Premier League campaigns where Southampton were in this competition. He got around 50 FPL points on both occasions, but I'm expecting him to do much better as a more mature player, and he's been in great goal-scoring form for the Saints. 21 goals and 13 assists in the Championship with an XG figure of 22.19, 11 big chances created. These are excellent underlying numbers, and he's carried this form into pre-season where he scored a brace in a 7-1 win over Eastleigh and also a 1-0 victory over Millwall. Game Week 1 looks bad against Newcastle away, but you just never know. Armstrong can still do something there. Then Nottingham Forest and Brentford in Game Weeks 2 and 3. I don't think Armstrong is a bad option as your third forward whatsoever. He'd be an enabler, kind of an 8th attacker who you rotate and sometimes leave on the bench, but he can do the business in certain game weeks. Seeing Jamie Vardy at 5.5 million does seem very strange. He has an excellent Premier League record against the Big Six and also against anybody. He has scored over 100 goals. He's got some great stats and memories, lifting the Premier League title 8 years ago. But Jamie Vardy is still here to stay. He's a good option at 5.5 million. Is he going to start every single match? Perhaps not. But to start this campaign, I think he's going to get the nod over the other strikers that Leicester have to offer. And he got 18 goals and 2 assists in the Championship. He won 2 penalties as well and got 211 FPL points for Leicester. And that wasn't the only time he got over 200 FPL points in a season. And that's why Jamie Vardy is very appealing at 5.5 million. And I'm not really a big fan of the other Leicester attackers in the midfield, with Dewsbury Hall moving to Chelsea. Otherwise, he would have been the only other one I would have recommended over Jamie Vardy. João Pedro missed the tour to Japan due to a muscle injury, and he is a doubt for Game Week 1, so watch this space. But if he is available, he's probably the standout 5.5 million forward in the game, even over Armstrong and Jamie Vardy. But that's going to be a close score, I think, between the Foxes striker, who is a Premier League legend, and João Pedro, who had a lot of high hopes last season, and he didn't really deliver. 104 FPL points was decent, 9 goals, 3 assists, good underlying numbers like 69 shots inside the box, but you're expecting more from him this time round, and I think he's going to start more games under the new manager compared to what he did under Roberto De Zerbi. So watch out for João Pedro if he's available. I would recommend him if you're going for that 2-striker formation and then João Pedro as your cheap third option. Otherwise, you might want to invest more money in that position or just downgrade entirely and invest all of the money in the midfield. The best budget players ahead of the new FPL season has been covered. It is an extensive list, of course, and there's going to be even more headed your way, like the best differentials, players to avoid, and rating your team's videos and possibly live streams. If you want to see that, let me know down in the comment section below. Send in your teams through Twitter and Instagram. The links are in the description below, of course, DylanRCM. But thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Check all the links in the description below, including the Discord server, FPL League, Draft Town, and also Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 1 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.